I will I'll.
Meeting has been noticed in the Evans Print Media Group, WCOW Radio, Megan Radio, La Crosse Tribune, Sparta City Hall, and Sparta Free Library. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No.
Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Lukasik, a second from Ms. Presswood to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries technically 5-0. One absent, or two absent. Next item up is public input. When I call your name for speaking, you can come to the podium. You will have 2 minutes to speak. In an effort to make things a little easier for you, when you have 30 seconds remaining, I'm going to kind of raise my hand so you can see me. So if you have any major points you want to hit in that last 30 seconds, you'll have the ability to do so. Just a reminder to keep comments respectful, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the opinions. And we will get started. I'm going to go in the order that they were submitted. So our first individual up is Ryan Oswald.
Hi. I'll start off reading verbatim here so I don't miss anything or key points. I personally believe we should encourage our teachers to teach children to think for themselves, have common sense, and learn from the past. I also encourage the school board to use common sense and learn from the past. If you don't remember, there were positive COVID cases and the school was shut down because they believed there were too many. Sure, you could argue that there would be more cases if children weren't wearing masks, so how about we look at this from a scientific standpoint? We could compare the Southside Elementary School to the Toma Lemonwire Elementary School that teaches 4K to 5th graders as the control group. Lemonwire is open almost all year round and has been since last year. They have had masks optional since July 13th and no huge spike in COVID cases. This year, they have had over a 92% attendance average, and that includes quarantining the children or teachers that were in direct contact with someone with COVID. If a child is sick or has a fever, they stay at home. Not every cold, stomach bug, or cough is COVID. The possible hypothesis for comparing the two schools is that masks spread germs more than not wearing them. That makes sense since almost anyone that I watch, including some of you even today, that you touch and fidget with your mask and that you're possibly spreading more germs from objects that you touch. What else does data say? There have been 0 deaths in school-age children from COVID in Monroe County, according to the health department. I reached out to a local medical examiner's office and found out that local medical examiners had to specifically write not a COVID-related death on death certificates since they were having deaths from car crashes and drug overdoses listed as COVID-related. We have to worry about the false information and statistics on COVID in our own community. But even fighting those trying to make it seem like COVID is deadlier than it actually is, statistics still say our children aren't in any serious danger. Where does it end? COVID isn't going away, so are you going to have our kids wear masks at school forever? Kids are more likely to get injured or die on their way to and from school. Should you decide how our kids go to school? The Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled that Governor Evers' mask mandate was unlawful. Local law enforcement agencies used common sense and said that they weren't going to enforce his unlawful mandate. Please think long and hard if you want to be the people responsible for making children suffer wearing masks, or if you want to do the right thing by letting parents decide what is best and safest for their own children. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I make a point of order? The school district presenter view is not turned on.
I think she means the camera for the person speaking. So.
Correct. The podium view, the camera isn't turned on for that.
Next individual up is Joshua Nichols.
Thank you to the Sparta School District and the members of the board for the opportunity of public input. I believe it is crucial to give parents a voice. If you as a school board vote on mandatory masks, you are effectively removing the voice of the parent to decide what is in the best interest of their child when it comes to their health. If COVID-19 seriously affected our school-aged children and the benefits outweighed the risks of forced masking, there would be more of causation for stricter mitigation strategies. The fact is, COVID-19 does not affect our children as it does for elderly adults. Wisconsin CDC statistics show 107,570 children have tested positive for COVID-19. A total of 0.00003% of them have perished. Furthermore, in the 2018 and 19 influenza season, 8 children aged 0 to 17 passed away due to pneumonia and influenza. More children died in 1 year than did from COVID in 18 months. Did any of you at any point consider mandatory masking in those seasons? The simple answer is no. Have you considered the psychological damage masks are doing to children by teaching them the air is toxic? Everyone around them is sick. Will we have a generation that suffers from breathing issues or one that suffers from social anxiety disorders? What about depression? I fear these are many things that are going to have to deal with for years to come as our children mature. We are protecting them from something they don't need to be protected from, opening them up to risks that are real. The thinking behind this is driven from fear rather than common sense. In conclusion, it is a well-known fact, our teachers, parents, community members, all have a safe, effective vaccine that is readily available and easy to obtain. We can conclude that this disease is less deadly for children than any normal flu season on record. This is backed by 18 months of data regarding COVID-19. We also know parents should be the ultimate decider when it comes to the health and well-being of their children, not public officials. I'm asking the school board not to outlaw masks, as every parent should have the ability to do what's in the best interest of their child when it comes to their health. I'm asking the school board to give parents the final say as to whether a child wears a mask or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual, Melissa Brooks.
This is a wheel of health that's used by our high school health teacher to teach about health. I just sent it to Nancy in an email and to Peggy. All right, so I am here tonight to ask you to keep masks optional for students, staff, and visitors. This wheel of health that I gave you, as I said, is used to teach that health is multifaceted. It's not just physical health, which is where we have been kind of hyper-focused with these COVID mitigations. So I'm tonight going to talk to you a little bit about the intellectual health. I made some other notes on there. I don't have time in 2 minutes to go over how masking impacts those other areas of health. But I have a teaching degree for elementary and middle level education, as well as an early childhood Montessori certification. I've worked in this district to set up literacy materials and worked as an interventionist for a year to teach literacy intervention to students. And then I was put on many interventionist preferred sublists and continued to do reading interventions with those students. I had my own classroom for preschool and kindergartners for 3 years, and then I did many maternity leaves. I can tell you that it is the best practice for children to learn by seeing their teachers' faces and hearing clear and unmuffled speech, as well as older students need to be able to hear clear and unmuffled speech while learning in other academic areas. While in school, we're also helping these children to become social beings. So much of our communication is through nonverbal facial expressions. Humans can actually create more than 7,000 facial expressions. It's one of the most difficult nonverbal communication to master is those subtleties between those micro expressions. When we mask students and staff, we are stunting the ability to develop these. Seeing faces matters. We have a vaccine for those who want it. We have virtual school options for those who want it. We've already made the children bear this burden for more than a year. Let's not make it another. Thank you.
Next up, April True.
Good evening. The most recent COVID-19 update by the Monroe County Health Department on August 18th states there were 92 new confirmed cases in Monroe County the week prior. According to their website, based on aggregate data they provide, Sparta comprises 42.2% of the cases. That equates to 39 of the 92 cases are likely to be in Sparta. Their data states 17.3% of the cases are in people 0 to 19 years old. That's 7 cases of the 39 in Sparta are school-aged children. According to Monroe County, high transmission level is 100 or more cases per 100,000 people. So if 46 people test positive of the 46,000 in Monroe County, we are in the red zone. To follow all their guidance and recommendations is unsustainable. If we follow this chart and all their guidelines without any discernment on how it affects students' learning ability, staff's teaching ability, communication barriers, emotional and physical health, we'll be in the same place we were last year, locking down because of a chart. There was never hope for freedom according to the Harvard model, and here we are again. We're not Milwaukee or Madison with hundreds of thousands of people and a much denser population than we have. Please do not impose a mask mandate. Let people choose for themselves and use their own judgment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Marla Leverage.
Sorry, I need my glasses. Good evening. My name is Marla Leverage. First off, I want to thank you for letting us have our public input, as I know that you value what we have to say and our concerns for our kids. I first want to applaud you for making masks optional this summer, giving parents the freedom, the right, and the responsibility to make the right choice for themselves and their families. This decision has given parents the most flexibility, and that is the right thing to do. The use of masks is a medical decision that should be left up to the parents and their doctors on a case-by-case basis, not to be imposed on everyone by the school district. That is why I implore you to keep the same mask policy in place for the coming school year. I know this administration and the Monroe County Health Department will most likely recommend you mandate masks. However, the current mask policy is actually the most inclusive policy for giving parents and students the freedom to make their own medical choices. If safety is a concern, parents and students have a variety of options, including virtual learning options, and best of all, they have the freedom to choose. Although the Monroe County Health Director's recommendations are coming from the CDC and the Wisconsin DHS, there is no blanket mask policy or order for Monroe County schools from the Health Department. As you know, each individual school board has the authority to make its policy based on what's best for their own students, schools, and community. You have the authority to keep the current policy for the Sparta school system, and I think you should, because the current policy respects the families and the parents in this school district, affording them the freedom and ability to make their own choices for their children. The current policy is the best of both worlds, keeping all options on the table for all families in our district. Please don't change the current mask policy in the Sparta schools for the upcoming school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Ken Becker.
I'm here to address my concerns about the busing for my children and possibly other parents that may have the same issues. I received my daughter's bus schedule in the mail the other day, and it reads as follows. Morning pickup is at 6:10 a.m. and afternoon drop-off is at 4:40 p.m. That is 10.5 hours that they're away from school and if taking busing. Not to mention they get ready to go to school at 5:45 at the latest and only have 5 miles from school, which is an 11-minute drive. Class starts at 7:40, but I'm also told that all school starts at 7:10 for food for breakfast if they get dropped off. Is that going to be part of the policy as far as the school curriculum too as well? added in there. My daughters leave before I get to work, and I leave home and I'm home before they are, and I drive a 30-minute commute. Now think of your own daily schedule and of your own children's schedule, even close to the current times that my daughters. I mean, is it realistic? My daughters are often the first ones on, the last ones off. I'm not sure if there's a policy, but why is it first on and why aren't they the first ones off during the school year? We are the first to get picked up, and the bus goes to County B near Rockland, picking up kids along the way, and then turning around, and on their way back, they actually don't pick up any kids, which is a lag time of that. So I don't know if there's any way we can get times on that as well. They mentioned that it's also that they drop off kids or pick up kids from local areas in Sparta City from daycares, and also they go all the way over to the Boys and Girl Club, which is on the east side of town, which we're on the way south side of town. So I didn't know why going through town make up some time there as well. So in conclusion, my concerns are, is there a policy that could be a first on, first off rule and limit the bus routes to 1 hour ride times? My girls are going to be on the bus for 3 hours a day currently, but unless the policy is that they get dropped off at 7:10, which is quite early in the morning, even for starting at school. Then can bus pick students up starting on outskirts of the district and pick up as they come back into school, which I don't see why they got to drive all the way out outskirts and then come back into the town. Does school board have a committee that reviews all the busing plans and does that quality check the route times for all students? I think there is also other students that are out there that are actually more time than our kids have. Another concern I would like to make is that other parents within my area also carpool their kids to school because they don't want to have the long bus ride times, and also they are also having their kids go outside the district. So the other thing is a mask mandate. If they do have a mask mandate in school, that's going to be 10.5 hours that my children will be wearing masks throughout the time in school. So that's another policy where do we need to wear masks? I mean, it's a policy on the bus, and that's all I have. And thanks for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, somebody from the district will reach out on the busing times, and we'll come to some sort of solution. Next up, Bob Leiden.
Good evening, guys. If you don't know me, I hope everybody does. I'm Bob Leiden, president of the Gridiron Club. I'm here to start over. It wasn't that long ago. It was long ago. I stood in front of you, a different group of people, and with the Gridiron Club asked for over $300,000 and have you guys co-sign it. You guys did. I sat up here and sweat for a long time until Paul bailed me out and gave me that final vote. With that being said, we came good on our side, and we thank you for supporting us. And we were able to put up a beautiful facility down at the field. I feel the stars have kind of aligned again, and another opportunity has arisen. And this time, the Gridiron Club is on the other side of the street. So you guys, as the board and the school, have the opportunity to support the community, your students, the athletes, alumni, and everything with this facility that can possibly go down at the Memorial Field area. So from the Gridiron Club past, from our alumni, from our, which I call elders or the charter members, we just want you to know, if it does pass through tonight, that you do have our 100% support. What that means, I don't know, but I think it holds a little weight. If you do need help, that we are out there for fundraising also. So that's all I got. And thank you very much for the time you spent on the committee to get this process to where we're at now. I greatly appreciate it, and I know the community does too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual, I'm going to apologize if I butcher the name. Giovanna Lopez.
Hi, my name is Giovanna Lopez. I'm a senior at Sparta High School this year. I am one of the few people who never minded going to school, and probably the only one who ever loved it. I have always loved learning and interacting with people in school, but being forced to wear a mask and stay away from my friends and teachers, both in school and virtually, turned my view of school from paradise to a prison. For the first time in my life, I was so ready for school to be done that near the end of my school year, my mindset towards my academics changed from I'm going to do my very best no matter how long it takes me to just to just do the bare minimum because I just want to be done and the teachers will accept the poor work for full credit anyways. Thinking about the virtual semester, forced masking and social distancing that consumed my junior year, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. It took away my love for learning. From a student who hopes to regain the Spartan Way mindset for their last year here at SHS, I ask that you keep the masks optional and in-building learning all year long. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Amy Lopez.
Good evening. I am not going to give you 20 years of CDC data on the ineffectiveness of masks against viral infections because I gave that to you this spring. I am not going to elaborate on the effect of COVID-19 on children's physical health because it is very minimal. I am not even going to tell you about the effect of masking and social distancing on children's mental health because on this subject, your focus has likely determined your reality. I will say that the parents you see before and students you see before you tonight are not your adversaries. I believe we, the board and the parents, are on the same team and have the same goal. We both want our children, the children, to have a successful academic year. Yet we as parents are in a unique position because we know our children as individual human beings, not as aggregate data. We know what is best for them as individuals. For some students, wearing a mask, social distancing, and even virtual learning may be best. As a parent, I know that and would desire my child to have those options. For some students, wearing a mask is a source of fear, confusion, anxiety. Social distancing and virtual learning interfere with their ability to learn. Again, I understand that and would desire my child to have the option not to wear a mask and to learn in person. So I thank you for your current mask optional policy, in-school learning model, and virtual learning options. I ask that you continue to allow parents and adult staff members and visitors to make the right decision for their children and themselves, even after the district's enrollment is reported to the DPI. We understand how the game is played. The board calls the plays, but the parents decide if the players stay in the game. Your decisions moving forward will truly reveal to us if we are indeed on the same team, and I hope we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is reports. Sparta High School Spring 2021 reports. Mr. Russ, I'm assuming?
Good evening, everybody. And sitting in the back, if the board members could maybe pull the microphone a little bit closer when they speak, I think that would be great for the people in the back, just to get rid of, can't hear you, and that sort of thing. So anyway, well, thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes to tell you a little bit about SHS, how we wrapped up. Just a quick brief timeline about how we started and how we ended at SHS. We can go to the next slide. Please, thank you. We started in cohorts for September, then we went virtual until basically mid-January. After mid-January, we did cohorts, and during this time, we did SVLA. Second semester, we had SVLA, we had 4-day, we had cohorts. And then we had a successful graduation for the class of 2021 on May 28th. And one thing that we added is that we gave several days at the end of the semester for students to give a little bit more extra time and support for what they needed to do. The pandemic affected our students in many ways. And it's kudos to our staff for being flexible, empathetic, understanding. And yes, we did do the bare essentials. We wanted to make sure our kids were as successful as possible, and we believe we did our best effort in that time. Our end of semester plans. Every student who was not passing at some point of the semester, specifically when we started to look into April and May, was given a plan. This plan was a path to getting a passing grade. This was not a time for a student who was getting a D necessarily to say, I'm going to miss all my work and I'm going to get an A. That's not what that was for. We had deadlines and we had timelines for that. But this was keeping high expectations of the essential standards. Ms. Brigham has been here before saying we're looking at the essential standards. And those essential standards are what our students need, our essential standards and skills to be successful in whatever post-secondary path they may have. This plan was communicated to students and families. And sometimes our students did not respond and our staff kept on prodding. Kudos to our student services staff, our nutrition services staff, our health services staff for continuing to support our kids, even though if they didn't want the support at that time. But once again, we had these plans out for students to get a passing grade. Too many times you hear high schools in some states were saying, well, I think we need to give an extra year of eligibility. So the high schools were hit very hard, especially when you start talking about failure rates and such. This is an example of a plan of the essential standards on the left, and then an evidence tool and an assessment tool. This is from an English class. So this, for example, if this was a junior English, I believe it was, these are some of the essential standards of a junior English that all the junior English teachers used and an assessment tool. So for our hard work, and once again, this is the hard work of our teachers. When you have to teach virtual students, you teach cohort students, you teach 4-day students, that's a lot on our teachers. As you can see, when we started to compare our last time we had a second semester, we drastically decreased the amount of Fs at SHS. We believe we did the essentials, and this is kudos to our staff, students, and families for not giving up. We had a lot of critical conversations, and our parents responded and our families responded very positively. And as you can see, we drastically reduced the number of failures at SHS during a pandemic. Also, summer school, Dr. Burnett set up a very good summer school program. We had 24 students gain a credit recovery class, so those F lists go even lower. And we also had about 30 students gain for credit classes. But we're very proud of what our kids accomplished. Nothing is given. They earned it through hard work and a lot of support. As we roll into next year, which is just a few weeks away, a week from tomorrow, we're adding interventions based on fall map data. Ms. Brigham has given you a little bit of information about the maps. We're doing it in freshmen and sophomores, math and reading. Our Wednesday is dedicated to stretch and enrichment activities. We do have the SVLA option. We'll continue to build those positive relationships. We'll continue to have our traditional freshman only day. And one of the things we're proud of is that we don't have any basic or remedial courses. All of our freshmen take algebra, then they take geometry. All of our students take biology, and then they take chemistry. Our students can learn at high levels with time and support, and we truly believe that. We embed the co-plan, co-serve model, putting a special education teacher into the regular education classroom to help all kids and really enhance that core, that essential instruction. The pandemic's taught us to use technology, and we're going to continue to do that. And we're looking to continue our PBIS initiative and really start revamping our academic and career planning to show the relevance in what we're doing in every class the best we can. Once again, I'm very proud of our students, families, and staff because they put the hard work in, and we're very excited for a new school year about a week away. Anyone have any questions about SHS?
Go ahead, Mr. Lukasik.
Well, I thank the staff and you personally for great job, well done. Is there any speed bumps that we can improve on for this school year that you can see on the horizon?
I think the speed bump, no. I think we're still going to work through some potential obstacles with some of our students. I think our interventions or our MAP assessments will show some things of where we're at. And I truly believe that if, you talk about learning loss at the high school, and I believe we've talked about it here, our Wednesday stretch and enrichment activities of the essential skills and standards will help tremendously along with our interventions. But I think it's still to continue that we've had some kids that are going to enter into SHS a week from tomorrow that have not been in school for some time. We tossed about the idea of having a freshman only day and a sophomore only day because they have not had a time to themselves at Sparta High School. So we're really going to have two groups of students potentially that are truly new to SHS in our building. So that is something that our staff has to be working through immediately, and it starts with building those positive relationships. Our in-service this morning was truly solely about building those positive relationships and establishing the why, that our teachers really have to get to the why and get to learn the learner and the student themselves. And that's what we're going to focus on first, because we truly believe if they feel that we care about them, they'll learn at high levels much quicker.
I think that's very, very important, and that you recognized not only the new ones coming in, the freshmen, but also the sophomores that may have missed out on that connection with the teachers and the learning environment. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
That's all I got. Josh?
Not a question, just a comment. I just want to commend you, the staff, the students, the families for doing such an amazing job. I mean, those results in 1 year are quite astounding, to be honest.
We try our best.
Yep. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Russ.
Thank you.
Next item up is approval of the consent agenda. You have the list before you. I'll give you a minute to go through. And when you're ready, I will take a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented, please.
Second?
We have a motion from Ms. Presswood, a second from Mr. Solberg to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Roll call. Sorry. Roll call.
Mr. Burns Gilbert.
Yes.
Sikorsky. Mr. Rasmussen.
Yes.
Mr. Lukasik.
Yes.
Ms. Presswood.
Yes.
Mr. Solberg.
Yes.
Mr. Lyden.
Yes.
Ms. Sikorsky.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Item A, discussion and possible action to approve a request for proposal for Memorial Field. Mr. Solberg.
Yes, so this was the start of looking at the RFPs for Memorial Field, and it was started, I believe the draft of that was presented to us.
I do
then,
have some
and-
additional information to address.
Yes, I was going to say
when
there's
you're
some more
ready.
information to go with it, so Dr. Vander, if you want to go ahead.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so just to clarify, in the RFP, the renovation is to include an artificial turf for both football and soccer. It is AstroTurf's 3D3 turf that's being spec'd. That is at Black River Falls and Marshfield. It's a quality, time-tested item. The goalpost, there was a question last time about the goalpost, a ball potentially in soccer hitting a goalpost and unintentionally scoring a goal. And what I have been told is that you can get these goalposts, and they're not that much more, that actually spin the whole goalpost around so that it faces the opposite direction. Also, I am aware that Toma does play at the VA park, and part of that is because the field, their turf field, is not wide enough for regional tournament play. So that was checked out. Next. So the scoreboard, I know this doesn't look like it, but it is a video scoreboard. It's the Daktronics 7.5 foot by 18 foot video display is the one that's being spec'd. If there's something more or less different alternate, you know, certainly we could review that at a later time, but that or comp is what's being spec'd. Next. There was a question last time about the field upkeep. The tools and maintenance for the RFP and the bid, will be included in any bids we receive. The two main pieces of equipment are a groomer. It's a brush and a rake to level the infill and stand up the turf fibers, and a sweeper to sweep the debris as needed from the turf. In what I was able to find out, the cost to maintain turf and natural grass when you stretch it out over time is comparable. The natural grass provides, it's more upkeep on an ongoing basis, but the turf has, you have to do some replacing of rubber mats, and there are things that happen every so often. So the overall cost ends up being about the same. So next. The field renovation is also set to include the replacement bleachers. Our current capacity, according to our WIAA information, is 1,800, but that includes the standing room because people stand all the way around the stadium. Recommended capacity would be 2,000 to 2,200, given that this is a remodel that will last for, I anticipate, a number of generations. We would certainly be wise to do what we could as far as safe seating capacity with a press box, fencing, and a walking track as part of the renovation. Next slide, please. Construction costs, I did double check with the walking track versus a full track, and given the expanded bleachers and doing everything very well, this is a good budget for it. If we have people coming in lower when we go to get bids, you know, we can certainly, there'll be some choices to make, right? Because, for example, your bleachers, your press box, there's different quality levels, different features and all that. But I was told that this was a good budget to sort of put out there and expect a very, very nice project. Next. Process summary. So if the board approves the RFP, that's this first item, and then and the initial project, and we're okay to go forward if and when, it will be sent to a number of engineer architects, less architects on this project than others, than engineers, because most of what happens with a football field has to do with the engineering and the ground and all of that. And construction manager. And then we would follow very much the same process that we did with the other construction, including reviewing the RFPs and inviting those forward facility committee members to be part of that process, select individual companies for interviews, conduct those interviews, review all of the information, and come to the board with some final recommendations and what the committee's saying. And of course, the board members may have as much involvement as they would like on that. And once the firms are set, then we work with the district stakeholders for a final design. So there are lots of steps to go through before we get to anything being finalized, and lots of opportunities to answer questions. But because this is such a process, if this is something that the board is interested in having ready for next fall, now would be the time to move forward with it. Next slide, please. And then just go back one. So this item is just for the RFP.
Mr. Lukasik.
For the RFPs that we're going to approve, we need to know by line item what it's going to cost and what we want first, what we need first, and then what that's going to cost before we can approve an RFP. So we have our needs met as you put out there, to the tune of, one of the slides was what, $3 million?
Mhm.
I think that needs to be looked at carefully on what the needs are, and encompasses the gridiron, if you might, some of the actions that take place. I've had a few people call me about being able to televise. There's a group that televises football games, but they need power and they need room to hook it up. I don't know if the press box is addressing that issue where it can. You know, there's a lot of things that, being part of the finance committee, and I'm assuming that this is going to go through the finance committee, that we have a good handle on all the possible needs that we have, seeing how this is going to be a 25-year longevity project, that we get it as good as we can with the amount of funds.
So Mr. Wiebelhaus sent a very nice summary of the process. And when you go out to RFP, you give a whole budgetary, like a number, and you list what you want. And then we're looking to the experts to tell us how they would allocate that money, how much they would need to spend, what they think it's going to cost. For us to go in and line item, that isn't how an RFP works. Sometimes RFPs are even more general than what we've given. So in terms of an RFP, we've really been rather specific. And so we want to go in and have the experts come in and look at our budget and look at what we want to have. And some of them may make some suggestions on things we might want to add. Just like you're saying, there are probably some things we haven't thought of. But we've given them enough information to give them the vision for the project. And that's why we hire them on the front side. We negotiate first with that engineer and that construction manager for what their fees are going to be, what they're going to get for us, what our max budget is. We have to come to agreement in really simplistic terms that they can get us what we want for that money. So we've given them the amount of information that they need to have to go and give us what we need. And that will go through the entire process, right? We'll go through the interview process. We'll go through the whole thing.
So in short, you pretty well, we've got that list that we went through, and those were the only items that went forward for an RFP. But that is not the end all if something else comes up that we feel we need that was overlooked.
Well, if you go back to the Herman project and our other facility expansion, we started out with a vision. We gave them parameters. We told them how many students, how many acres we have, what we're looking at. They gave us an idea. And as you are well aware, a project it's not horribly fluid, but it's like a budget. You set your best guess, you follow it to the best of your ability. And when you make changes, you have good reasons why. And we do the same thing here.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Just a comment that I went through the RFP, the process memorandum from memo from Mr. Wiebelhaus is very helpful to just understand how this will all play out. The timeline that is in there also really just sets everything, and there's an expectation that is that would need to be followed for the engineer architect, so they know what the expectations are and what our timeline needs to be met. And we've got the key items of what we want included in it. So I think it's the right starting point to explore, see what comes back to us.
Guess I got a question. Was that sent out? Because I didn't receive it.
I have in board docs here.
It's in board docs.
In board docs? Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Rasmussen.
Question on the scoreboard. Is that what Mr. Rebel is proposing?
A question came up this past week from athletic director principals is, are we getting a video scoreboard for not only athletic events, but things like graduation, where we could get the student walking across the stage and have better visibility. So I asked Mr. Wiebelhaus, and that is what he spec'd for the project. So that is what he had already spec'd for the project. So yes,
Okay, I guess,
based on other projects he's done and what's being done in our area.
I guess my comment on that would be that, you know, where is it manufactured? Meaning if something goes wrong with it, which probably will, is somebody going to be local? Like this side of the state that can fix it?
Lacrosse Science does Daktronics. We went through this with the Herman project also, because these sign things are, yeah.
And then one other question for Leah, what do we currently have in our Fund 46?
Over 4 million. I don't have the exact number, but over 4 million.
And does that include the OPEB?
No.
So that would be an addition. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Can I make one clarification?
Go ahead.
So there's a couple different ways you can go about doing a project. When we did the last facility expansion, we used a construction manager model, which means we brought that construction manager on board right away with the engineer architect. And that is one of the reasons why we came in under budget the way we did, because there was somebody watching how the actual construction of things was going to work throughout the whole process. I think, Mr. Lukasik, what you were talking about is design build, where you hire somebody to design it and then you hire somebody else to build it. We have had very good success with the construction manager process and would like to continue to use that.
Any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the request for proposal for Memorial Field.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion from Mr. Solberg, a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the RFP for Memorial Field. Roll call.
Mr. Rasmussen?
Yes.
Mr. Lukasik?
Yes.
Ms. Presswood?
Yes.
Mr. Solberg?
Yes.
Mr. Leiden?
Yes.
Mr. Burns Gilbert?
Yes.
Ms. Sikorsky?
Yes.
All right, next item up, item B, discussion and possible action to approve the Memorial Field renovation project.
So we split this into two parts. One actually looking at the RFP, and then the second part, the intention of moving forward with this project. So we have an approved RFP here now, and then if we show, we'll have more serious bidders is the consideration, if we show the intent of going forward with the project.
Go Go ahead, Mr. Rasmussen.
Moving forward, is that lock us into
I'm sorry, James, can you turn your microphone on, please?
It is on.
Thank you, much better.
Does that lock us into something that we may regret at some point?
This is the approval to move forward with the process. If we don't like the cost, if we don't like the project, obviously the board has the authority to make a change. However, this vote should be a good faith vote that our intent is to make improvements at Memorial Field so that we have people who are going to bid, right, this is our reputation, and so.
So I would move to approve the Memorial Field renovation project.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Rasmussen and a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the Memorial Field renovation project. Roll call.
Mr. Rasmussen.
Yes.
Mr. McCaffrey.
Yes.
Ms. Presswood.
Yes.
Mr. Stolberg.
Yes.
Mr. Lyden.
Yes.
Mr. Burns Gilbert.
Yes.
Ms. Sikorsky.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Next item, discussion and possible action to approve eliminating the Sparta Area School District Pandemic Handbook.
Yes, correct. It was the pandemic handbook had outdated language that dealt with the FFCRA and other things that it's no longer applicable. That the I believe policy covers what's in place now. So just outdated information that needs to be addressed.
Any questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
I would move to eliminate the Sparta Area School District Pandemic Handbook.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Rasmussen, a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the removal of the pandemic handbook. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Next item, discussion and possible action to approve the 2021-2022 co-curricular code for Meadowview Middle School.
Okay. I'm going to try to do this. Is there feedback?
No, you're doing just fine.
Okay. So we remember that we approved in the committee the Meadowview Middle School co-curricular code. We were pretty happy with that. So it's pretty straightforward.
Are there any questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
If there are no further questions, I move that we approve the 2021-2022 co-curricular code handbook for Meadowview.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion from Ms. Presswood, a second from Ms. Sikorsky to approve the 2021-2022 co-curricular code for Meadowview Middle School. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item, item B, discussion and possible action to approve continued use of the 2020-2021 co-curricular code for Sparta High School.
Okay, so this was a little different situation. There were several members who requested Mr. Blaha update the co-curricular code to make it less focused on athletics and more broad for other co-curriculars. So he is able to use the current handbook, basically from last year. So we're looking for approval for that.
Any questions? If not, I'll take a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Lukasik.
Nancy, here is clarification here. My understanding was also that we were going to leave it like this, and Mr. Blaha was going to keep a close eye on the other clubs and that with the coaches, and therefore make a change if a change is needed to address the other issues that were discussed in your committee, correct?
I think that's close. I think what we asked was that he get input from all areas and bring us back something as soon as he was comfortable with it. And I honestly, I don't remember what we agreed on for a date.
I believe it was 1 year out is what we recommended.
Yep.
Yep, that sounds right.
Any further questions? If
That's
not,
all
I'll
I-
take a motion.
Make a motion to adopt it.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Mr. Lukasik and a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the continued use of the 2020-2021 co-curricular code for Sparta High School. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item, discussion and possible action to approve additional volleyball coach due to numbers. This one came up just recently, so it did not get to go through committee, but Nancy and myself both approved it for it to come directly to the full board. So,
Yeah, that's right.
go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Lighting. Yes, we have 21 JV level volleyball players, which is a surprise, which is about 7 more than we were expecting. So very happy to recommend that we hire a second coach. That coach will run practice separate, so we'll actually have 2 separate courts. We'll break them, and we'll be able then to add probably about 4 to 6 more games for them.
Good. Any questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
If there are no further questions, I move that we approve the additional Sparta High School volleyball coach due to the numbers.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion from Ms. Presswood, a second from Ms. Sikorsky to approve the additional volleyball coach due to numbers. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Blaha.
Thank you.
Item B, discussion and possible action regarding COVID, specifically masking and instructional delivery. Dr. Van Duren.
Next slide, please. Our mission is to educate all students academically, emotionally, and socially to inspire curiosity and resilience. That happens best when our students are learning in person. Therefore, in order to live our mission, having more students learning more of the time in person helps us with that mission. It's better for students. It's better for parents and families who have to work, who are running businesses, who rely on others to work, for our students' mental health and well-being, and all of the reasons that people have talked about. Next slide. The next why is that our case rate is high. Within the Sparta Area School District boundaries, the case rate is 205.8 per 100,000. Any number above 100 is high. Case rate within the city of Sparta itself, where most of our school facilities are located, is 226.1 per 100,000. 53% of our students are under the age of 12 and are not eligible for vaccinations. Therefore, they are unvaccinated. Of students who are 12 to 15 years of age, 23% are vaccinated. Students ages 16 and 17 are 31% vaccinated. Our adults are nearly 50% vaccinated. But when we look at the age ranges, those ages 25 to 34 have the lowest rate of vaccination at 29%, and those ages 18 to 24 have the next for 34%, an age of young families. Here's the why part 3, and this is the toughest one. Last year, we had masks and 6-foot distancing, and that enabled us to be very targeted with the quarantines. We didn't have to identify numerous close contacts. The CDC and DHS have cut that down to 3 feet with the universal masking so that we can keep students in school. If students maintain the 3-foot distance and universal masking is in place, then we can target quarantines. If we don't implement the universal masking, Then we quarantine entire classrooms. So that's the difference between 2 or 3 students being out of school for 14 days and 20 or more students being out of school for 10 to 14 days. Next. So as I look at that equation from a position of leadership in the district where my responsibility is to keep the doors open, keep our students learning in person as safely as possible, the equation becomes really straightforward. We want maximum in-person instruction. We have high case rates, and we have quarantine rules that help us out if we help ourselves. My recommendation, and I know it's not popular, and I don't say this easily, is that we begin the school year with masks in place indoors during the school day and revisit as cases start to come down as we know we can handle it. First alternative.
Folks, come on. Quiet out in the crowd, please.
In the alternative, all staff and those pre-K-8 require masks because our students 12 and under can't get vaccinated. And we have a middle school that holds grades 5 to 8. And to ask a school to have some grades masks and some grades not masked is untenable. And our teachers have asked us that we don't do that. The second alternative would be for all staff, all grades, all visitors, volunteers to be masked so that we try to keep our doors open. So Tiffany Geisler from Monroe County Health is here to answer questions. And that's all I'm going to say, except that whatever the board decides, the district will support, and we will do our very best job to keep our doors open. Thank you.
Any questions from the board members? Commentary?
Mr. Leiden, I'd like to hear, if the individual is here, I'd like to hear her input from Monroe County Health Department.
I think she's here more for a Q&A type of basis as opposed to a specific presentation. Obviously, if you have any questions. Mr. Solberg.
As we all know, this has not been easy for any of us over this course of time, and this is a hefty decision that affects many, all of us. I can say personally that I would like to see a choice for everybody. That is my personal preference. But that is, I can't take that point of view as the position I have here. I have to take into account everybody that this decision affects. And our goal is to provide the best quality education for all of our kids. And need to find the best way to keep our kids in school 5 days a week for as long as possible, not knowing what the future may bring. So I want to work through some of the challenges that come with having that option to mask or not mask. One of them is the quarantines, which as there are case rates, there has to be contact tracing. And I guess I would have a question for Ms. Kulig and, sorry, I missed your name. Thank you. That if we did not follow the county guidelines, we have our own in-house contact tracing. I thought I remembered from last meeting that if we were not following county guidelines, that would have to be repeated. The contact tracing.
So for isolation and quarantine, so we isolate the sick. So anybody who is tested positive, they're staying home, right? So the quarantine are anybody who fits that close contact definition.
Sure.
So we work with the school district to identify those close contacts. If we don't have cooperation from Ms. Kulig and Angie Frost, we will quarantine a whole classroom because we can't identify, and we will always err on the side of caution. Again, because the goal of public health is preventing severe disease and illness. And again, I understand that statistics right now aren't showing that it affects kids really with COVID itself, but we also have to take into account the long-term effects of that. And some of the research and data that's coming out now is that what we call COVID long haul syndrome is affecting our kids now. So they're suffering the effects of COVID long-term versus the short-term, or they develop multisystemic inflammatory syndrome, which is pretty severe. And we have had kids in the county that have experienced that.
Then, thank you for the information there. But specifically there, would contact tracing have to be duplicated?
We work with the school district.
So what does in-house the county will take with?
Yes. And if there's questions, they call and contact us. This is the situation. We have a band student that's positive. There were no mitigation strategies in place. Who do we quarantine? How do we quarantine? And if we're not sure, specifically for band, then we reach out to the state, and the state says, these are the individuals that you quarantine.
Thank you. Giving that obviously gives a larger possibility of larger groups of students, classrooms, having to be quarantined, pulling them out of school, putting further stress on the classrooms, the students themselves, teachers, that they need to do dual purpose to a higher degree. And also there's the risk of spread among the adults within the district. And that can happen at any point in time, I realize. But there are some key departments that if they get high enough, particularly one, teachers, but also food service, busing, that the whole district is shut down after those two are gone. We're in a world of hurt. I would hope that we would never get to that point, but that's certainly a possibility. The other one that I've hiccuped on a lot is putting the burden on the teachers of, and it may not be voiced, but especially at the younger ages, of knowing what the family preferences are for their child, and that child not being able to, not willing to follow it, but them feeling like they need to reinforce it to that child. And that's not their responsibility. That's between the child and their parents. But there are going to be ages that they're going to feel that pressure at school and either not follow their parents' wishes, and that it's another dynamic to take into account, I guess, among both kids and teachers there. So again, I'm very stuck in between there, and I need to hear more from others, please.
Mr. Leiden, if I may, please.
Go ahead, Ms. Presswood.
Can anybody tell me right now, currently, how many children under the age of 15 are in quarantine and or are sick?
For the district or the county?
If you have both those numbers, that would be fabulous, but specifically in the district, because that's why everybody's here, right?
Okay. So I can calculate as you guys keep going by age, but I can tell you right now, we currently have 24 students in quarantine and 3 positive cases in the district.
Okay, so I think after the many phone calls and emails that I have had just today, I have to keep it up to the parents. I feel that we need to stay optional. And if once school starts and numbers pick up more rapidly than we were anticipating, or things go in a different direction, again, like I said 2 weeks ago, we call that special meeting and we reconvene and figure it out from there. I think with, I mean, 3 students out of our 3,000 students, that's a pretty small percentage in my opinion, in moving forward with the direction that I hope that we take as a board. I don't feel that we're at the point yet where we have to make any rash decisions. We've seen both sides of what people want. Those people that don't want to send their kids, they have that choice. We have the SVLA, right? And those parents can send their kids virtually, but keeping schools open for as long as possible and keeping masks optional, I think is going to be our best bet moving forward at this moment in time. Again, if things get progressively worse once school starts, I think reevaluating and re-looking at the suggestion I made 2 weeks ago with the percentage of students that get sick pre-COVID, the absenteeism, that 20 or 30%, I think we come up with some sort of option to correlate that percentage to make it a more viable situation for everybody to be in person in school. I don't know. I mean, there's schools right now that have already gone back. I was in Northern Indiana yesterday and all their schools are back already and masks are optional and they haven't had an uptick in cases. I'm in South Carolina today and they're back at school and same thing. Like they are not having the outbreaks that we are fearing that we may or may not even have. That's my personal opinion, and that small percentage of students right now, today, this moment in time, with school being a week away, I think we just need to sit tight for a while and just kind of see what happens and call that special meeting that we may have to call. But that's my 2 cents on it, honestly.
Anyone else? We don't allow public comment at this point, sorry. No, sorry.
So I have
Go ahead, Mr. Lukasik.
I think Colin had some.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Go for it, Ed.
I've heard both sides of the story. In our special meeting we had, I diverted to what works and what doesn't work. And I think James brought up the fact that we diverted after we made a conscious decision on what the district needs from the Monroe County Health with our different colors and so on and so forth. I personally don't like the mask. I personally think that it affects the education of our children and the goal of our children.
Folks, quiet please, so people can hear them, especially people that are virtual.
Now, having said that, just came out today that the major university in the nation, which is, Madison University, requires their staff to be vaccinated. And if they're not vaccinated, they need to be tested twice a week. In the same way with the students. The problem that we have is the responsibility of making sure everybody is safe. With the idea that we're going to go back to normal and make mask optional, and the kids are going to be moving around, I don't know how we can just say, okay, that classroom is quarantined without, they're going to be out at the playground, they're going to be in the gymnasium, they're going to be intermixing. I don't know how you can just say quarantine that classroom if somebody comes up positive. The whole school, correct me if I'm wrong, would have to be covered under the quarantine. And that's shutting down the school for 14 days. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Quiet, please.
Our mitigation protocols are still in place to minimize that movement so that we can contact trace to the best of our ability. And
So-
each situation is going to be different. For example, if we have an athlete that comes up positive, we watch the footage and we see who that player came in contact with. So you do the research. It's looking at footage, it's talking to teachers, it's looking at the schedule of the positive student. It's an involved process, and there's
Well,
not an easy answer.
Our special meeting that we had was we were opening the building. The cafeteria was going to be open just like normal, and everybody were going to come in and eat.
Since then, we have implemented, we're doing it differently. We have to keep distance. We can't have everybody just eating as normal and doing as normal, or exactly what you say is going to happen.
So our mitigation process is changing.
Yes,
Okay. 'Cause
it is.
I
The mitigation is responding.
So I understand that, you know, we have a fraction of the students going to summer school compared to the full bore school year. And so I've heard comments about, well, if it worked in summer school and we didn't have any cases, why wouldn't it work when we're going full bore? And that got me wondering about the fact that with our special meeting, everybody's going to be eating in the cafeteria. Everybody's going to, you know, the mitigation that we had now is going to make it even tougher in order to figure out this contact tracing.
As it has been since the beginning of the pandemic, the situation can change rapidly. Since our special meeting, the conditions have changed. I wouldn't be here asking for this if the case rate wasn't where it was.
So maybe then we need to ask that question. During summer school, how many students under the age of 15 that were unvaccinated did get sick? Not quarantines, how many sick students did we have throughout the last 3 months?
I don't have it broken down by age or strictly summer school. I don't know if you have that. I don't for summer school. I can tell you that since I want to say we had 9 cases, I think it was, in the under 18 population in July, and we're up to 59 already.
So if I heard you correctly, it jumped from 9 to 69?
59.
59, okay, thank you.
I'm remembering the numbers.
Okay.
Mr. Burns Gilbert, you had wanted to speak.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Leiden. Just had a couple points to add, so thank you all. Again, right, not easy decisions, and what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, right? If the cases continue, the direction to be able to revisit, and they've been doing that. I think when we met a couple weeks ago, it was under 100 case rate, and now it's well over 200 case rate, right? From the information they just presented. And so I think if we wait until a number gets bad to do masks, for me, that'll be too late at that point because it's already going through, and I have trouble kind of comparing the data from the summer because that's 3 months ago, right? 2 months ago, and things have changed so rapidly in the last month with Delta variant. And those were cases over the summer when the density of traffic in the schools was not even close to what it would be coming in full 5 days a week, everybody in class. So those are just some initial reactions there. And I think another piece that I'm playing with too, right, is just, and I appreciate Heidi's perspective with those other states. And I also am seeing other states that are having hundreds and thousands of kids quarantined because of what we're talking about, right? Because of going back in person, no masks, and then not knowing who to quarantine without the masks in those pods, and right, essentially shutting down schools. I just did a quick Google search, and Kentucky, Tennessee, and Oklahoma just popped up, right? 3 states there of that happening. And I feel like that process of starting in person and going virtual and then coming back hybrid, that to me is more destructive to the learning than asking people to wear a mask for 6-7 hours a day, right? Knowing that when they're not in the district, in the buildings, when they're home with their families, they're going to make whatever choices they want and can do that without the masks on, right? That's their choice. They still have that choice outside of that school setting, but yet we have that obligation to protect everybody. And we know we can't do all students in person. Like, that's not an option to do that and maintain the recommended distancing. So that's kind of out of the question with those 3 pillars of mitigation. So then we're left with the masks and then the sanitizing. And so if we go mask or mask optional, have those confirmed cases and quarantine all those people, then not only is that disrupting the students and the teachers, but then I think Mr. Solberg brought it up, and that's the point too that is sticking for me, is how many food service people can be sick before we have to shut down the kitchens, right? Or how many of we already have a tough time getting bus drivers, but how many of them can be sick before we can't transport students to school? And so those are layers that we can't guarantee a mask would prevent, but we made it through last spring all the way through the school year. We didn't remove the mask mandate until after that. And I think that was part of the main reason why we were able to stay in person from January until the end of the school year. So that's just one piece. And I think that I'm sitting with those layers of the quarantines and not necessarily the mental health and stability of our students, and then our families trying to go back of, right? Like, oh, we're virtual for 2 weeks. Let's go. What are we going to do for childcare? What do we, right? Versus if we're able to build in those mitigations now before the cases rise, before we have to quarantine a whole building or a whole classroom, right? Doing our proactive legwork instead of reactive feels a lot better to me. And I would personally, right, similar to what Ms. Geisler said from the county, err on the side of caution, right? I would rather have, again, people are going to be mad either way, but I would rather have people be mad at us for trying to be too safe. And then, oh, it actually worked and we were able to stay in person, versus not being safe. And then we don't know what those long-term repercussions or even the short-term, right, repercussions will be. And so that's kind of where I'm landing there. And then I think I just wanted to share, just thinking about the conversations I've had, and hoping that we will move forward together, right? Regardless of how this shakes out, right? We're one community and we need to be that in order to serve our students the best way that we can. And so I would advocate that we make masks mandatory and see how things go. And then I would rather do that to start, and then maybe a couple weeks down the road, as cases start to decline, or as the Delta variant figures itself out and people learn more about how it's affecting people, I would be more apt to then take that and make it optional as case rates go down and as recommendations allow us to. Because ultimately, if we don't, again, the board would be going against every single guidance from health professionals, federal, state, local, right? So I also have a hard time approving or getting behind anything that will do that as well. So those are just a few points that I wanted to make, some things that I'm thinking about. And ultimately, right, like we said before, no one's going to be happy regardless, but we have that mission to keep students learning to the best that we can. And to me, that's in person, right? That's the masks, that's the mitigations that we can control, because we can't have everybody in person and maintain distance.
Mr. Lyden?
Go ahead, Ms. Sikorsky.
Thank you. First of all, I agree a great deal with what Mr. Burns Gilbert just said. Also, I guess I wanted to bring up, I know all the board members received emails, calls from parents who are in favor of students wearing masks. They're very uncomfortable with their students coming to school. And frankly, they were uncomfortable coming tonight because they knew that it wouldn't be a safe place. They've restricted their activities. They're trying to follow some guidelines. They were intimidated about coming tonight, which I think is unfortunate. But they did contact us. We got long letters from several people. So I think we need to keep in mind that there are two sides to this. There are parents that want masks. The other thing I think it's important to keep in mind is, as a school district, we're one of the largest employers in the area. And I think that we really need to think about what we can do to encourage all of our employees to be vaccinated. And I know and I'm using the word encourage at this point. There are places that are requiring it. And yesterday, Pfizer's vaccine was fully approved. So there's no longer any temporary or iffy statements about it. And the other thing right now, the governor's offered people $100. And if you don't think that's motivating to people, I was in the Onalaska Clinic today. There are a lot of people that are taking advantage of that. So I really think that could change the game for us if we could get more people vaccinated. And I do think that more children will be able to be vaccinated soon. We just don't know when. So I really think that beginning this school year with masks in place inside, not outside, we realize outside isn't a big issue anymore, but that's our best bet for keeping staff healthy enough to staff our buildings, staff our buses, staff our lunchrooms, and to keep our children healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sikorsky. Any other further comments from members of the board? Mr. Rasmussen.
I'd just like to comment on a few of the things that were said and not said. I don't have all day to sit down and put together a presentation about all the bad things that can come out of this and all the terrible numbers. What kind of bothers me is if we don't ask the right questions, we don't get the answers that may be balanced. 3 cases out of 3 students, 3,000 students isn't 3%. It isn't 0.3%. It's 0.03%. Now, I don't know why we have to ask these kind of questions. Another thing that isn't brought up is what is the mental health risks of these kids wearing masks continuously? I'd like to know some of that stuff, but that's never presented. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I stated that we were in red all winter, all fall, winter. And the board at that time, we were still in red, and we made a commitment to start pushing forward to open. And we did. Had we been following the CDC, Monroe County, and all these other people, it wouldn't have happened if we went by their guidelines. If we end up voting to mask in 2 weeks or whenever the first day of school is, it's not going to go away. To sit there and think for 1 minute that we're going to look at this the next month and change our minds, I don't believe that. I don't believe it for 1 minute. Hey, knock it off.
Quiet, please.
I would urge the board to take a good, close look at this. We went through last spring, we went through the summer with no incidences that were of any major consequence. And I think that's the direction we should go tonight. If people are very concerned about masking, they can wear a mask. The people that don't want to wear a mask, if people are that worried, and we talked about, a safe place. These people out here, they took their time to come out here tonight. I don't see them carrying clubs or anything. I don't get that. I don't know. It's just, they should probably just quit. But for me, the health and well-being of the students is more than just the COVID. It's also about the masking and what the harm does to them in that respect. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? I suppose I'm the only one who really hasn't talked yet. Over the past month, I would say I've come to a firm conclusion on what I'm going to say and do probably 15 different times. Flipping back and forth one way to the other. And even right now, if we would vote right now, I will likely make my mind up as soon as I make my vote. Because I don't know. I worry as a parent, not for my kids, because I have a good solution where if I have to stay home with my kids, I can do it. Okay. So virtual learning for me isn't really that big of an issue. I worry, for the parent that works 2 jobs who can't take that time off. Their employer won't give them that time off. What is their answer? If we went to a virtual setting. I mean, we talked last year, the whole winter into spring, we got to come and get into in school because of what the mental aspects of what that would mean for our students. And that's where I keep getting hung up of where we go. I get both sides of it. I've been a big advocate for sports and stuff. That mask, we can't have it during sports. The option presented here solves that problem because it specifically says during the school day. Sports are after school. Okay. But then I also go back to the flip side. And when we ran school year and we were closed all those months, and you have the regret. Could have we been open? I don't know what the right choice is. I feel like whatever choice we make, in the way the universe works, it's going to be wrong. We mask, numbers ain't going to do anything. 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, numbers will plummet, Delta's gone. We don't mask, we'll be here in 2 weeks talking about how we just closed the entire district because of numbers. Do I think either case is likely? I have no freaking clue. I wish I did. So essentially I rambled for what? A few minutes there to tell you I have no idea. Sorry.
There's nothing to be sorry about. I think everybody should take into consideration that this is a very serious decision that the board has to make. And it does not come lightly because there's a lot of people, it's known that Monroe County is one of the poorest counties in the state. Moms and dads, they can't afford to lose their job. They expect the kids to be able to learn their lesson and be taught by a teacher. They don't have time coming home from a busy work schedule if they have one or two jobs and sit down and try and teach somebody algebra or whatever. You know, it's been a while since us adults have been out of school. So I break it down by priority. And I think the superintendent made it quite eloquent. What are our goals and objectives for the school district? What is the most important thing that we as a board decide on? And that is to have our kids, our students in school. I think wearing a mask for a short period of time is very little to ask. And as we went ahead last January and adjusted our mitigations and it worked out, I don't think it's too much of an issue to revisit it in a month, have masks in the building, not outside, and then revisit it in a month and take a look at the figures. And that's what we're all about. We're all about the priority, and the priority is getting our kids in-house safety. And as it was pointed out, just as many who say no mask or optional mask, there are just as many that say, you know, they want masks on. So here again, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. But I would rather err on safety than I would, because one kid come down and end up in the hospital is not worth it.
Go ahead, Mr. Solberg.
Ms. Gulick, would you be able to run us through another quarantine scenario so I can visualize what that would be?
Do you want to kind of, or do you want to take it, Tiffany? Either way. We can take. Okay. So what are you specifically looking for that we can help with?
Classroom with kids with masks, without masks. Okay. One comes with down with symptoms, and how does that work with those who are masked versus those who are not, and who is quarantined and who is not in that, within their contact tracing area?
So in a classroom setting, if you are not physically distancing 6 feet or more, and you're not masking, and you are not cohorting, then anybody who fits that close contact definition, so within 6 feet for 15 or more minutes, and that's consecutive or cumulative time in a 24-hour period, that fits the, or physical contact, or comes in contact with the individual's positive cases secretions, that is what we go by for a close contact. So anyone who fits that definition will be quarantined.
Masked
if you're,
or not.
Huh?
Masked or not.
Mask or not. If, per CDC, there's universal masking, then those individuals that are within 3 to 6 feet would not be quarantined. But it's based on universal masking because it cuts down on the circulation and the droplets and those sorts of things. So in order to do the shorter feet and not quarantine those that are less, more than 3 feet in that 3 to 6 range, it requires universal masking.
Any further discussion from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we continue with making masks optional.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Rasmussen, a second from Ms. Presswood to continue with the mask optional method.
Excuse me, Mr. Leiden.
Any further discussion? Mr. Lukasik.
I would ask Mr. Rasmussen maybe to change one word from optional to recommended.
Mm-mm. I don't agree with that. I think we keep it as optional. That's the motion I seconded.
I'm going to keep it at optional.
We have a motion from Mr. Rasmussen, a second from Ms. Presswood to have masks be optional. Roll call.
Mr. Lukasik.
No.
Ms. Prestwood.
Yes.
Mr. Solberg.
Yes.
Mr. Leiden.
Gosh, I can't hear Liz at all.
She's on me right now. Yes.
Mr. Burns Gilbert.
No.
Ms. Sikorsky.
No.
Mr. Rasmussen.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-3. Next item up, grants and donations.
All right, for board approval, we have Sparta Festivals has donated $3,000 to the high school to replace the baseball audio system. The Sparta Baseball Club has donated $1,500 for bats and equipment to the high school. Sparta Supergas has donated $1,000 to the high school for student supplies. And that is what we have for approval.
Can I get a motion on this?
Approve the grants and donations.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Mr. Solberg, a second from Ms. Presswood to approve the grants and donations. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
All right, we also have a number of donors to recognize tonight. A large group of them have donated to the Betty Jones Memorial Girls Golf, and that would be Colette Burkwalt in the amount of $20, James and Patty Syverson in the amount of $20, Holly and Peter Gunther in the amount of $20, Jeff and Carol Olson in the amount of $15, James Rasmussen in the amount of $25, David and Dorothy Herring in the amount of $30, Robert and Ann June in the amount of $25, Dr. John and Shirley Alexander in the amount of $10, Dave and Mary Ann Bolstead in the amount of $20, K&S Snow in the amount of $25, Kathleen Olson, $25, Alice Olson in the amount of $25, Christopher and Laura Crome in the amount of $25, Deb and Brian Buswell in the amount of $75, Carl Becker Jr. in the amount of $25, James and Bev Fernandez in the amount of $25, and Maureen Schauf in the amount of $50. Next. So I would like to also extend a huge thank you to the donors who contributed to the Pathway to Success t-shirts that are going out to students. They're being printed as we speak. It is really cool, and I've had several comments. We gave them out at the open house, and everybody commented on how nice it was to see the businesses and the school district have that show of unity. So McLean Realty, $100 to the district. All American Do-It Center, $100. Gunderson Lutheran, $200. NECAL Corporation, $200. AMKM Gymnastics, $100. Sparta Floral, $250. Lopez Family Dental, $100. The Parenting Place, $250. Osborne Tripp and Schmidt, $200. Kiwanis Club of Sparta, $300. Sparta Rotary Club, $200. Curran Development, $300. Referral Staffing Solutions, $250. Sparta Toma Broadcasting, $250. Cooley Real Estate Club, $100. and the Sparta Lions Club, $200. The Sparta Lions Club also donated $320 to the high school for high school band supplies. And Terry Waterworth has donated $480 worth of school supplies to the Sparta Montessori School. So many thanks to these donors who are making our back to school better than ever. So thank you.
Thank you to those donors. Meeting schedule and future agenda items. Anyone's got anything? Hearing nothing. Mr. Lukasik, go ahead.
I anticipate that we're going to have COVID updates every meeting.
I believe,
part of
I believe that was the plan.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Item E, announcements and information.
I would like to announce that tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. is the staff welcome back meeting. This is the second year that we'll be doing the all-staff meeting virtually, not together, because we don't want all of our staff in one place. If any of the board members would like to join in that meeting, you can zoom in at 8 o'clock. Board members will all be introduced.
Anything else? Next item, adjourn.
So moved. So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Mr. Lukasik, a second from Mr. Solberg to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.